advantageous as well.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's 3:30. So everybody knows this meeting's recorded. And we have just one thing on the agenda today that should take about an hour, I guess. And Chief Crown, you're going to start us off with the recap. I guess we should notice everybody here is but Councilmember Harold, and she's called in and told us she couldn't make it.
Very good. Well, good afternoon. I'm Steve Crown, your Chief of Police. We've not done one of these to this extent in the past, but I thought it was about time to kind of see so many things that have changed within the department. We've never really done our victory lap with you all from the previous years, or actually set out what our goals look like for the coming year. So this is a good opportunity for new council members to really kind of immerse themselves in the police department, as well as for us to kind of show we don't have the same sort of work product that other departments within the city do. When you see roads built, you see parks being developed, that's very visual. Our most visual thing is you driving to and from your work and seeing flashing lights and wonder what the police are up to today. So we're going to hopefully show you a little bit of what the police are up to. In the future, you're going to see a lot more involvement up here with one of these presentations. You'll see that we kind of broke it into divisions within and units within our department. So those supervisors will actually be spending a lot more time in front of you doing one of these presentations. I think that's kind of a great opportunity for us in succession planning, as well as to expose you all to more of our departments. So they'll be doing this in the future. I gave them a break this time. Okay, so the photo there, obviously we got accreditation in 2023. This was reaccreditation, so there was all the standards that we'd already passed in the previous 3 years, and now you're not only providing proofs that you have it in your policy manual that you do these certain things. In this reaccreditation process, we literally had to show that we did it, that what you have in policy and what you have in practice are the same. So a crazy amount of standards. I can't thank Nancy Syrie and Captain Reinfeld for their great work that they did in this process. You can kind of see that it's all grins, and we actually got Mayor Kuntz to come over and celebrate with us that day, so it was pretty cool. The next bullet point there is the Cortical Wellness app. It's on every single one of our phones, and what that is, it's literally a central location where our officers can go in, find out who our critical incident and peer support members are within the department. They also have access to therapists that they can all do on their own and make contacts if they're suffering from anything from a mental health issue to right on up to figuring out better ways of increasing their workouts. So there's information galore on this app, and we launched it this year. OIS stands for Officer Involved Shooting. We built an after action plan from the 2022 officer involved shootings that we had. What we're started off with that is a SWOT exercise where you're mapping out your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. And so from that cross-section information from those that were actually involved in some of the officer involved shootings to our command staff to our supervisor levels. And what we were able to do is come up with timelines and checklists that condense the amount of time that you have on your hands, and hopefully get people back to their homes after one of these critical incidents occurs. So that was very useful. It's not in the final product, but very soon it will be. You see the traffic safety grant that we got from the Washington Traffic Safety Commission. It was awarded in fall of 2023. And right now we've got one of our radio talents in the room that's on the traffic unit. If you were listening to KPQ at 1 to 2 this afternoon, you would have heard Officer Reed Klein, who's sitting here with a baseball cap. He was able to really accentuate what is the traffic unit, what are the goals, and you'll actually see a social media post later with some of their impressive statistics from just the month of January. 4 new officers completed field training, officer training. So we use a lot of acronyms. I'll try and spell them out for you. If you catch me, please raise your hand and I'll explain those too. Field training officer program lasts 14 to 16 weeks. It's with veteran officers. The student officer is in a car learning the process. It's a tremendous resource. Planning goes into the resources that go into training our officers, and they're huge. They go away, they're out of sight, out of mind at the academy. When they get out of the academy, now we have to teach them to be police officers in the city of Wenatchee. So hats off to those guys. We believe that in a field training program, in our size of department, about 5 is the maximum amount of folks that you can push through that program and not over accentuate that training piece to the point where it starts hurting our resources for street patrol. So it's very difficult to get all those officers trained up. At the end of the year, we were, for our FTE count on the commission side, we were 45 of 45 for I think about 2 weeks. And now we've got, there's rest of the story down the road, and then we'll cover that. Exercise Safe Night was with the Wenatchee Valley College, where we did an active shooter training. It encompassed everything from air support, ambulance, first responders, the entire range of resources that you would need for an active shooter event. Very, very useful for all local agencies to collaborate on those debriefs after your training. So that was a major event for us. And then regional items, we bought a Lenco Bearcat. Some of you may not know what that is, but it's a SWAT vehicle, armored vehicle. Entered into an interlocal agreement with our partners in the valley that are also a part of the East Cascade SWAT team. And that thing has been ordered. Hopefully before October of this year, we'll get to actually have it in the city of Wenatchee. It's made clear back in, I think, Massachusetts. Crisis negotiation team was added to our SWAT team. Again, as you try and develop a SWAT team that uses force as that deterrent, on occasion, you're wanting to accentuate your time, distance, and shielding. Hostage negotiation team really develops that amount of time, and you can control the pace on those critical incidents when we respond to those, and they're highly useful. So that was added this last year. I'm going to get into, I'm going to pass the mic over to Captain Chance, and he's going to talk about the 2023 Administrative Bureau. I'll tell you this, it might get a little bit confusing because in January we swapped our captains. We have operations and administration, operations being patrol centric. Administration is everything from records detectives and non-patrol functions within our department. So last year in 2023, Captain Chance was in charge of the Administrative Bureau. He swapped in January over to the operations side. So, or I had that exactly wrong. So he was actually part of the Administrative Bureau back to patrol. I had it right. You're up.
All right. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Captain Brian Chance with Wenatchee Police Department. As the chief said, in 2023, I oversaw the Administrative Bureau for the Wenatchee Police Department and since transitioned back as of January 1st over to operations where I have patrol. I've also got, just want to point out Tammy Patterson here. She's our records supervisor. And she did a lot of the heavy lifting on some of the things that you see here in front of you on this next slide. So in 2023, we hired 2 new records specialist 1 positions. Tammy worked on developing the records assistant position, which was a position that we had in the past that we brought back, but she revitalized the job description for that position and gained approval for a second records specialist 2 position, which initially was also developed by Tammy, and we hired our first record specialist in 2023, correct? Or 2022. And we got approval to add a second record specialist 2 position along with bringing back that records assistant position. In detectives, we recovered a missing 21-year-old developmentally delayed female. Used social media to recover a 36-year-old developmentally delayed female and solved a high visibility murder with regional cooperation. CRDTF, Columbia River Drug Task Force, which is another one of our regional entities here that is focused on gangs and drugs, gun violence in our communities. Just some quick stats here. They had 119 new cases opened in 2023, with 69 of those cases closed by arrest. And they seized, and there's a photo there to go with it, in total, nearly 25,000 fentanyl pills during the year 2023. And I think I'm passing the mic now to Captain Reinfeld for Ops Bureau.
So, good afternoon, Council and Mayor. I'm Captain Edgar Reinfeld. I was the Operations Bureau Commander last year and have now rotated back to admin, so you'll see it flipped in the last part of the presentation. Speaking about operations in 2023, we've already mentioned clearing 4 officers through FTO. It's a big deal. There was a 5th who did not clear FTO that we separated because he wasn't meeting standards. And so what that means is there's an extra body in the shifts, there's extra work, and there's extra focus on ensuring the training officer and the trainee do a lot of certain cases, but also giving them a lot of time and patience to figure it out, because it is complicated. So it is challenging. The chief is right, 5 in a year is tough. We may do more in the future. We had 23,180 calls for service, and an interesting statistic that we did in our annual use of force report showed that we used force in only 62 cases out of more than 23,000. So 0.267% of our calls for service involved the use of force. The bigger picture on that, though, is it does not include thousands of other contacts, including the more than 3,400 traffic stops we'll see later, thousands of field contacts, social contacts. The actual number is maybe an order of magnitude lower than that or even less than that, at how often we use force here. A lot of that comes down to how we work and taking the time to de-escalate people as much as possible before we have to go there. We provided 72.25 hours of impaired driving training regionally, and regionally is putting it lightly. Regionally, in this case, meant statewide. For a couple of the classes, people are coming from all the way at the northeast corner of the state and all the way from southwest Washington to get A-RIDE and other classes that are related to impaired driving. And a huge success at a couple of levels. Citizens Academy had 21 students finish this year. We had been running about 12 to 16 because that's what we got for applicants and people who would show up. 22 people started, 21 finished, including our records assistant hire, who will start in a couple of weeks. Additionally, of the 17 candidates that we cleared for the records assistant consideration, 2 more were also in the same Citizens Academy class. And Officer Abbott, who is in field training right now, came from the 2022 Citizens Academy. So a thing designed to inform our community has actually become an effective recruiting tool as well that is run through patrol. Also want to talk a little bit more about training and the regional nature of what we're doing now. So we had 3 patrol tactics classes run this year. Those are also of statewide impact, but of critical note in 2023, we completed 100% of our staff being certified. The deadline is December 31st, 2027. We're there today. The problem is we have to recertify every 3 years, so many of us will go through 2 or even 3 times before we reach the actual initial certification requirement. But it's not a bad thing that use of force number is so low because of the application of the principles from this class. We also completed EVOC and EFRADA again. It is a challenge to find a place to drive cars like maniacs, more precisely, and have the room to run out and have the issues go on. And this coming year, we'll likely use the super oval again for a very specific thing in pit. But for actual driving in open space, the airport in Ephrata is still our only real option, as we lost Alcoa that we had used 2 years before as a possible environment to do some of this training. That impaired driving training mentioned on the prior slide actually reached 218 students. 218 total students, some were likely the same people in a couple of different classes, but that varies all the way from high school age up to experienced tenured officers learning more about impaired driving. Our average training hours per officer in 2023 was 62.5. The state requirement is 24. This is undershot significantly, as I did not have the SWAT training hours in there, which would have driven the average up probably another 5 to 7 hours per officer. Part of the state requirements for accreditation and certification include anti-bias training annually. In 2023, we completed a class called the Criminal Legal System, Structural Inequalities, Monetary Sanctions, Policy, and Reform. These also come out of LATAXA, the Law Enforcement Training and Community Safety Act. They came out of 2020 and evolved us into patrol tactics and these other things to change how we work and de-escalate. For 2024, we have another one of these LATAXA courses scheduled, and we will continue to do 1 or more of them annually to maintain this training standard. Finally here, and possibly the biggest success out of regional training, is CRAZE, which is Civilian Response to Active Shooter Events. Officer Magnuson spent about half the year recovering from a significant injury, but in that time we were able to utilize him on light duty, and he trained more than 1,000 citizens in our valley, in Chelan and Douglas counties. Dozens of presentations, as small as 10 people and as large as 200 for places like Crunch Pack and McDougall Fruit. And it was extremely high demand once we publicized it. We've actually recently sent 2 more trainers through the alert program that Chelan County brought to town here, which is how Officer Magnuson was certified. And we'll be continuing to offer this hopefully in 24 and 25 and going forward to offer business owners and others to do this. Phenomenal success, a huge number when you consider almost or about 1% of our 2 counties were trained last year in this one thing. So the next several slides are a lot of statistical information. And with each of these, I'll talk about the validity of some of the numbers because we've identified some issues here and there, but the key trends remain. We have 4 years of data here, and this first one is about traffic. The important thing to note is this traffic, it does not have anything to do with the traffic unit, which started the day after this data period closed. We saw a significant increase in traffic stops of 3,440 last year. However, yesterday we had discovered anomalies with how they're entered by Rivercom, so the number is a little squishy. It will be very much improved for 24. That it might be a little high, but it's still in line with a trend that we've seen before. Infractions issued went down substantially, which is interesting, but our criminal traffic tickets went up relatively significantly. Accidents were actually down, which if we look historically at Wenatchee, that's not how we do things here. We like to wreck cars. But it was down about 5% year over year, which is an interesting thing. And hopefully we can see a change based on the traffic unit over the next year or several years. And then finally, DUI arrests were back up significantly. 2022 seemed to be anomalously low, but they have rebounded up to where they were in 2021. And with the traffic unit and the dedicated additional hours to traffic, this number will likely increase dramatically. Please, at any point in any of these, stop and ask questions because this stuff is dry. It's of use and it's interesting, but some of it can be rather confusing. So in our calls for service, straight upward arc, if you look at that top line graph, it just has gone up. It will probably continue to go up with 23,180 in 2023. That's a 28.9% increase over the 4 years. It's a pretty significant growth in the activity. A call for service means somebody has called us or we have generated a call in the field and given it a call type and are working on an issue, from a barking dog up to a murder. They're all a call for service. Our public disclosure requests have similarly increased. We saw a very significant spike 2020 to 2021. It's leveled off a little bit, but they continue to grow. And they've increased over 34% in that same 4 years. And finally, the number of incident reports. So not every call for service requires a written report and an incident report. But we've seen significant growth here. It's up 27% over the last 4 years, with almost 6,000 last year on just over 23,000 calls for service. And that, the incident reports for 2023 were 85,469 pages was the volume documented just in incident reports by our officers. The next one is quality of life data, and unfortunately, some of the data on this slide is broken. The homeless, mental health, and drugs involved categories require use of a specific reporting method, which fell off in 2023 after good growth in 2021 and 2022 that led to a very reliable statistic. This is probably an 80% accuracy, or maybe a little bit less, in those three areas. The trespass line, however, is based on calls for service that are trespass, and it's an alarming increase. That third set of bar graphs you can see is just skyrocketing. And 2,232 calls for service for trespass last year resulted in 1,400 trespass notices issued, meaning that a business owner has said, or a property owner has said, I don't want this person coming back, and we do up to 5 years, and we gave them a written piece of paper and logged in our records management system to say that, for example, Mr. Hornby is no longer allowed to go to Atlas Fair for 3 years, for maybe perhaps his behavior, perhaps something else. But it's that sort of thing, and we track that. If he returns there, he can be subject to arrest for trespass. So in this way, we track these. But 1,400 issued last year. When I look back, we only issued 551 in 2020. It's a skyrocketing problem, which is indicative of our issues with homeless and other behaviors that just continue to go on. So that's why I say the data for 23 with the homeless, mental health, and drugs involved are way low. They just weren't captured the way we would like to see, and we're going to try to reinvigorate that for next year.
Do you have any statistics on how successful you are when you trespass somebody? Do they reoffend, or are they staying away as they're told?
We haven't looked at that, and that's something that we probably need to find a way to take a look at in the future. It's pretty easy to take an individual's name and say they were issued a trespass notice. Did they return to that location? Anecdotally, we know that a significant number of the people we trespass will return right back to the same spot, sometimes repeatedly, and acquire or accrue additional arrests. Others, that trespass notice is good as gold. In fact, they will eventually call and ask, am I still not allowed at wherever? Or they'll contact an officer in the field. Can I not be at 7-Eleven? Or am I okay to go back to 7-Eleven? So it varies. Never looked at it, and it's a good point to try in the future. Might be a little complicated, but there's always a way to figure this out.
I just, because of the mental health issue, I can see where people just don't understand that they've been trespassed, and they just...
Certainly. Absolutely.
Real quick, I'll kind of add to that equation, and it's discussed in a little bit different spot here. Mostly what you're talking about here are misdemeanor offenses. Our jail is not taking misdemeanor offenses. They're just simply not. Right now, we are on booking restrictions again. They're only taking mandatory arrests. That would be DVs, DUIs, and felonies. So having any sort of impact on that is very difficult when the worst that a individual can get is a citation, and they're walking away with a citation in their hand. So that's kind of problematic for us.
And I think that's an important fact for all of us to know.
Pardon me, I just stepped away. My body-worn camera was freaking out and just buzzing on the table. So it's been turned off now.
It was lonely.
What's that, sir?
It was lonely.
I suppose so. It's disconnected from me and it's lost in the woods. Our next slide includes personal crimes and rare incidents. So we have any number of personal crimes we could track. We track two general categories in this reporting, and that's assault and domestic violence. Assaults are up. However, assaults are down from 2022 to 2023. If you had looked around June 1st of 2023, assaults were up like 15%. Over the year, they're down almost 6%. It's weird. I can't explain why. The first half of the year, people were grumpy with each other and willing to hit each other, and they weren't later in the year. So that's positive, I suppose. And the domestic violence number is interesting that 2020 and 2023 are exactly the same. There was a spike in 2021 as we did our second year of quarantine-like activity. And it relaxed a little bit in 2022, and then we're right back to where we were before, which is another interesting one because early in the year it looked higher. The bottom two, pursuits and homicides. Pursuit law is almost impossible to say what these numbers mean because pursuit law has changed year after year after year. So we were back at 3 last year, actual pursuits. A note there, that box indicates there were 20 additional cases of eluding. So basically, we go to stop a car, it takes off, we don't have cause to pursue. We're tracking those as well to say, here's the actual scope of how many people fled from us. The interesting thing in those 20 cases of eluding, at least twice in 2023, officers identified a driver, including some who fled from us as much as 3 or 4 times, track them down at their house, take them into custody, charge them with the eluding, and go about our business without chasing them at the time because we didn't have legal authority to do so. The homicide number with 1, if that's our average is 1 to 2 per year. This was a high-profile one down on South Mission by the S-curves, but it was solved within hours and in custody very rapidly within 4 days. Overdoses. This one is interesting. We have started tracking, the coroner, of course, has always tracked fatal overdoses, and we saw a pretty significant spike last year in the city of 13 fatal overdoses, 12 of which involved fentanyl. We saw a drop this year with 8 fatal overdoses and 6 involving fentanyl. And at the same time, in 2022, there were 123 overdose calls that were called into Rivercom for EMS, and there were 124 in 2023 in the city limits. So we saw the same similar level of activity. Not every overdose call is about drugs. Sometimes there are other things. Sometimes the overdose calls come in as cardiacs without looking into each individual call for service and spending probably days picking through them. It's difficult to get this tracked down, but I'll give credit to Rivercom dispatcher Mike Smith for spending a solid hour and a half with me the last couple of days, distilling information out, narrowing it to the city only to get us something. The reduced numbers are indicative of Narcan being everywhere, and it works at some level. It is not ending the substance use disorder or the overdose problem, but it is slowing the death problem. And so it's evident that having it everywhere in the community works, and our officers used it several times in 2023, but community members used it probably hundreds more times than us in 2023. So a new one that we had never done before, I don't think we'd ever thought about it until Chelan County Sheriff's Office put out a number and said, this is how many calls per shift our deputies handle. We looked. And Officer Chris Wright is on light duty recovering from injury, collated a lot of the data for this. Basically what we did is went through each day of the year in 2023 and figured out how many officers were assigned to patrol for how many hours, and then converted that to 12-hour shift full-time employees. So our average was 10.11 FTE equivalents per day in 2023. So basically 5.05 employees on the day shift and 5.05 employees on the night shift. He also went through and counted each call by day, and then we broke down further averages. So we came out to there was an average of 63.47 calls for service per day in 2023, and it led to 6.39 calls per 12-hour FTE per shift. That doesn't seem like a lot, but the thing to remember is a call for service might require one officer, or it might require everybody who's on and then everybody else we can get. And the call for service may take 3 minutes to handle, or it may take 6 hours. So 6.39 per shift is significant. Our highest call activity day in 2023 was September 1st. Don't know why. 108 calls for service. It happened to be exactly 10 FTE equivalents on that day, so it came right to 10.8 calls per officer per 12-hour shift. Our highest activity month was June. That surprised me a little bit. I would have guessed July with, we just get fireworks calling, and they stack up really rapidly. But it wasn't. It was still June, and our highest, so by month, they averaged 7.31 calls per 12-hour shift. Chelan County Sheriff's Office had put out their number, which led us to look. Their number was 2.4 calls per shift per deputy. Have no idea how they calculated it. We took this model as being something pretty close that probably meant something and was of value. And then the big one, the kind of elephant in the room, overtime. Overtime costs and our overtime budget. We have 5 line items for overtime, 2 of which have 0 line items, but between the 2 0 line items, we're just over $500 of overtime. There's not really a reason to place an overtime budget against those compared to patrol investigations. And then records, we exceeded our overtime budget by $353,465.68 last year. The highest single driver was training with over 2,100 hours and 27% of that overage. There's an additional 3% that went to shift coverage for training, meaning we pulled people out for training and had to cover them because we were below minimum staffing. Our other 3 high drivers are major crimes. A lot of those hours come from the drug task force. Everything they do that they're working overtime for is pretty much going to be categorized major crimes. They are working a trafficking case. They are doing by bus. They're doing by walks. They're doing these things that build toward major investigations and seizures of 556 grams of Skittles fentanyl, which is what that picture was a pound of poison. These are good things. They are major crimes. The next highest driver is holdover, which means officers staying past their shift to finish paperwork that is required before they can leave. And then the other category, other being 1/8 of our overtime, is not going to work. We have never done this analysis before. It's going to drive how we changes and how we document our overtime to ensure that it makes sense and that we can see what other means. There's 22 categories for overtime right now. How can 1/8 of it be other? We're going to figure that out, and the charge has been put to our supervisors already to, if you see other, try to figure out if it fits something.
Will the additional FTEs that we brought in help lower that number a little bit, or, well, of course, you're,
Alarmingly, it will probably be worse in '24, and there's a couple of reasons. One significant one is we need to recertify about 1/3 of the department in patrol tactics. And patrol tactics is a 24-hour course. It's only during the day. Some of these people work nights, some work days. That alone, in addition to providing instructors for it, will drive a significant quantity of overtime. There's probably a sweet spot for how much staff would alleviate the overtime, let everything run, but the cost of that would probably be significantly greater than the budgeted overtime.
I think that's what I was gonna ask too. So are we predicting that the training slice will grow next year? Is that?
It may. It depends on a number of factors. Last year, injuries on some of that business, it knocks people out, and then we have to do more to get it done. The other thing missing from our training overtime category right now, were you a student or were you an instructor? Which will mean dividing that category as well, so we can get a better handle, do better analysis, and be more effective in what we're trying to figure out.
what did we budget for overtime this year?
Similar,
For 24,
about the same.
about the same.
So this is a thing long-term for a long-term
Yeah,
adjustment.
good.
Back to the chief here.
Okay, we're gonna switch gears to 2024 goals. So in the first quarter, we purchased this last year a software package called Lefta. It covers everything under the sun, from training, field training program, to internal affairs, to use of force, pursuits, but it's better than what we have been doing, which is absolutely analog, filling out papers. You have such a higher rate of human error on just paper, tracking it, being able to pull it back. If you're ever in a lawsuit, you got to have a good record. So that's why we thought this was a plausible solution to some of our fears. And we got that in the last year's budget. Brad was really stingy and didn't give us all the money that we asked for our software packages, but we're going to make do. We'll find money in the seat cushion. The interesting thing about this, again, is that it's not using up city server space. This is a cloud-based application that has its own storage. It's redundant. It's easily retrieved. So very good move for our department in purchasing that. We're going to have to comply with all of our accreditation standards moving through this year. Some of that is end of the year reporting. Some of the statistics that you saw from 2023 will be rolled into individual reports: bias-based policing, use of force, pursuits. All those end of the year reports have to be developed. Some of them are based in RCW, where we have to turn that information over to WASPIC, Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs, and some of it is just has to be on file for accreditation purposes. Nancy Cyree, she's going to be our accreditation assessor. She's going to continue that work, and that is really important. Every time that Nancy does assessing, she's doing it for other agencies, and she's getting ideas from other agencies that are going through that accreditation process. She can bring those back home, come up with better ways of maybe doing things internally. And so we're going to support her continuing on with her certifications that are associated with being an assessor. It's time consuming, yeah. Sometimes it can take up to 3 days of her time to throughout the day to assess another agency. If they're like us and have very few problems, that time can be condensed quite a bit. But if they do have problems, that takes up a tremendous amount of time. So it's really good to have that type of resource in-house and be able to send her to other agencies and help them out. Officer involved shooting use of force review. We have one from the Eastmont extended use of force. That's coming up in this first quarter. We're gonna hopefully get that rectified really soon. And then we have our independent investigative non-law enforcement community rep. That's a mouthful for saying that we need at least 2 people to be volunteers. And any time that we are the involved agency and we have an officer use of deadly force, those 2 community reps need to be inserted into the independent investigative team. So thankfully, we'll hopefully be getting those volunteers in place very soon. In the second quarter, we're going to be kicking off Evidence on Cue. It's another software package that we purchased this year. This is for barcode reading of evidence. If you can imagine, every time a piece of evidence comes into our department, before we're doing paper, we have 3-ring binders all over the place that have every piece of evidence that's in our evidence storage. That's going to kind of go away. And every time we're going to print out labels that you can actually read, nobody's handwriting on them, and they're going to have a barcode associated with them. So if you need a piece of evidence that goes up to court with an officer, click it, it's out, click it when it comes back in. Really good tracking of our evidence that way. The other piece of that is a digital on cue, which is going to help us, we think, be able to solve our problem of distributing, sharing digital information. Everything from your storefront where there's a store camera and we have footage, we now can tag that information and store it in one particular location, easily retrieved and shared with the courts. We're going to be implementing LEFTA, which we've been setting up since about October. We're going to use it for our field training program documentation and no more binders rolling around the office. I don't know what we're going to do with all those file cabinets, but I'd like to see them all gone. Promotional Assessment Center. That is a very technical process. If any of you have seen an assessment center, we have a vendor that comes out to our department. It's very defendable as far as the process that they use for testing our promotional candidates. We're going to be doing that for the corporal level as well as our sergeant level. That's scheduled in June of this year, so they'll be out for that. And our Civil Service Commission approved us signing a contract, and Brad already has the money in the civil service budget for this assessment center. We're going to start on our strategic plan. Some of you have read through this strategic plan. There's a ton of stuff that we killed literally in the first 6 months to 18 months because people are just that way within our department. Some of the stuff actually happened in 2023 with getting LEFTA and some of our the barcoding. That was all within that strategic plan. check those off. The traffic unit was part of the strategic plan. Now what do you do with it? And that might be a refinement within that strategic plan. But the best part about it, it's something that the public can see, it's accessible, and it's on our website. WASPIC training, Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chief Conference, that's going to be happening in May. One of the best things that we get out of that is we go there, we find out what the new accreditation standards are in their meetings. We also have, it's top-notch training for top executives as well as captains and lieutenants and sergeants if they want to attend that type of training. We have an emergency management oil spill exercise, and we have our own internal through Jessica Shaw. She's putting together a water quality emergency management exercise. So those two are coming up in that second quarter of the year, right around the corner actually. We have our budget kickoff indicated on there. We start early. We start looking at what our needs are going to be in the coming year and what adjustments might be needed. And so that we'll start on that. Third quarter, we're going to have National Night Out again. It's going to look very similar to what it has in the past. I think having the locations that we have right now is probably the good fit. There's a lot of time to do some planning, so if you guys have some ideas for that, particularly in your district for new locations, let's talk. It's a great opportunity for you council members and the mayor to get out in front of the public and enjoy our community, because it is a lot of fun. Back to Nancy, she's going to earn her WASPIC certification for accreditation assessor. That comes with just work, and we support her on that. Refined strategic plan objectives and initiatives, that's going to be that second wave of meetings that come out of that. And what we try and do is get a really good cross-section within our department. It's not going to be something that is done only at the command level. We get some really interesting and exciting opportunities that come from all walks within our department. So we're going to do that. The second, that next bullet point there, body worn camera tech refresh, they're literally going to pack up our old, our CPUs that are all going to be rotated out. They've served their time. So, and we're going to reallocate and hopefully reduce the overall number of computers in our department, while also making sure we're going to transition to where everybody in the department has a tablet, a rough book, I think is what they call, so that we can use docking stations and all of your information is specific to the individual officer. So that's going to be a transition where you're going to see a lot of those towers removed from our department, and the new technology goes in with docking stations. The Lenco Bearcat is going to hopefully arrive in that fourth quarter, and I'm looking forward to actually having our folks utilize that new technology. With everything I just told you, with being at 45 for all of 2 weeks in 2024, we're looking at least 28, looking at least 8 new hires that need to happen within this year. You know how it works. Even though if you may set the target of 8 officers, we may only get to 4 of them, because you're dealing with assignment at the Basic Law Enforcement Academy, you're vetting candidates. There's all these moving pieces before you can even sign the paperwork to have them brought on. So that is a major delay in being able to meet our deficit. And we'll actually show you a slide here in a moment that really points out where we're going to be this year with the retirements that we know of. Captain Reinfeld is back up.
So we've broken out our individual areas within the department with goals for the coming year. So for the Columbia River Drug Task Force, where it's not exclusively ours, we do have the sergeant and 2 officers. We have the largest contribution of personnel to the unit. We're going to spell it out here. In the first quarter, we've got to return to and maintain full staffing. There are officers assigned against every position in the DTF from all of the agencies. However, due to a variety of personnel moves at other agencies and ours, we have at times been pulling people away from DTF work, assigning them to patrol to cover. In the first quarter, actually Tuesday, hopefully this coming Tuesday, they'll be back. Everybody will be back in the office. We'll be back to working with a full staff. We're going to have to borrow them again now and again over the year, but for a while they should be good to go. They have an expired ballistic shield, and they had actually bought, we had also actually bought for our SWAT team some ballistic plates for wear that turned out to be garbage. The company had lied with their certifications. We don't know if they work or not. We rapidly replaced those for our SWAT team. These are supplemental plates for the task force. They are replacing theirs as well. They plan on training in undercover and confidential informant rescue operations, high-risk events, and they bought some new rifles in the last year that have been set up finally and need to be qualified with so they can be placed in their cars. And then finally, for the first quarter, to close out arrests for their 2023 open cases. Some of these cases take a long time, a year or more, and they've got a few pending. They're just looking to pick people up. They're going to start cleaning house here in the next few weeks and back at full strength and get these people picked up and done with. For the second quarter, WSNIA is the Washington State Narcotics Investigators Association. They do this annually to gain further information, network, get new technology, do legal updates, all that business, just like we do for WASPIC as command to do it for narcotics investigations. It's also the Tactical Federal Officer TFO training for 2 of the assigned detectives. One should be going through next week, actually in the first quarter and not the second, and a second. This allows joint operations with federal, usually DEA or Homeland Security, because some investigations cross a lot of state lines. These drug cases are interesting and kind of terrifying how broad they go, and more resources are good. For third quarter, the supervisor and lead detective, the lead detective of the task force happens to be Officer Albert Gonzalez, will be going to a 5-day supervisor course for narcotics investigation units to further develop their skills. And they have one of their undercover vehicles, which is kind of burned. People know it now. It's got enough miles on it. They're going to swap it out. They have some seized vehicles and that one to trade in for some other used piece of invisible to drive around the community. And then finally, to purchase an outfitted surveillance van. I think it's been a very long time since our task force has had a surveillance vehicle that could actually be used very well. And this is a thing. This would not be a new purchase. This will definitely be something used, and then some minor modifications to make it possible to do surveillance from within. With our detectives division, this is all about training. It really is all about training. So for the first quarter, child abuse interview and investigation training for Detective Hewitt. He had not had it yet. It's mandatory for our detectives. It's also an excellent interview class, and it also leads towards certification as an independent investigation team lead investigator for state qualification for investigating lethal uses of force. In the second quarter, we've got some forensic technician training, which is crime scene stuff. Crimes Against Women conference we send to annually. It's a huge domestic violence training opportunity, and that travel and that course is funded by a grant called STOP. That's a federal grant we receive funds from every year. WHIA, the Washington Homicide Investigators Association Conference, is another huge training opportunity for a week. We'll send two. And then finally, Use of Force Core Principles Training. This is a new course that ties into a new state curriculum for use of force training. Detective Amel not only acts as a detective, but also one of our defensive tactics trainers. So this is part of certifications leading forward. In the third quarter, we have to appoint a new detective sergeant, because in the fourth quarter, Sergeant Weatherman is retiring. So he's thrown down that gauntlet and says he's going, so we need to be prepared to replace him. And that other goal in the third quarter is to certify all of our detectives as independent investigation team lead investigators. We have several within our department, quite a few within the region, but continuing to build that capacity means when we have one of these incidents, it's okay under state law to appoint them as the lead and have them run the show. For our records division, they've got a lot going on this year. In the first quarter, onboarding our new records assistant, as noted before, that'll happen March 5th. So that's great. Continue to purge property and evidence. There's no reason to barcode everything we have if we don't need to keep it. So they are racing and trying to drive that number down. We're under 5,000 items in property and evidence. If it can be destroyed, they're trying to get rid of it as fast as possible. And Officer Wright, who I mentioned earlier, helping collate data, is helping with destruction. And then they're going to train an additional field training officer. Our records, I think, is the only one in the region who uses the same field training officer model for evaluation and training that we do for our officers. And they need another one, and conveniently, Deborah Silva has been able to get into an FTO class week after next and will get trained so she can be used to train our new records assistant in part as we get started. In the second quarter, to implement the evidence on queue, it's the barcoding software for property and evidence. Also to promote the additional records too that was approved for this year, and conduct our vulnerable persons registry day, which will occur on April 20th down at Pybus. I encourage anybody to stop by and have a look at it. It's a great thing if you have vulnerable adults in your family that maybe can wander, get lost, even children. We photograph them, we get information about them, we put it in our records management system, so when we contact them in the field, we know who to call. And lots of families come back every single year and update it. New photo, new information. It's a fun day down at Pybus. In the third quarter, complete a 100% inventory of property. I foolishly thought when you transition from handwritten labels to barcodes, you do your inventory at the same time. The company says absolutely not. Code everything, then inventory it, and then see what you missed, because you'll find stuff. So we'll do it their way. And then in the third quarter, to complete the training for both that records assistant and the records specialist 1, and then in the fourth quarter, complete training for the newly promoted records specialist 2.
So 2024 goals for patrol. Currently, Officer Lee is on FTO. He is a lateral officer that came to us from up north in Okanagan County. So he'll be clearing FTO. We also plan to train 3 new FTOs. Currently, we only have 2 FTOs that are actually assigned to patrol. We do have a handful of others that are assigned to specialties throughout the agency, but we've also lost several through attrition and retirements and other things that have come up. So we're going to train 3 new FTOs. That class is going to be locally held here, so very minimal cost, no cost actually, I believe, associated with getting them through that training. For the second quarter, our 2 other officers that are, one that is currently on FTOs, Officer Abbott. We anticipate she'll be clear within the second quarter of the year. And then Officer Romero, who is our most recent hire, another lateral officer that came from an agency over on the west side, should also be able to clear FTO within that second quarter of 2024. We're going to train an additional 2 new FTOs is our goal. All of those FTOs, those 5 FTOs, will be FTOs that will be assigned to patrol. So taking our current 2 and boosting that up to 7, so that to train these officers that we're hiring or that are currently in the program, we don't have to continue to pull FTOs from their current specialty assignments and diminish the capacity of those agencies or those divisions. And then Corporal Wilson is planning to retire in the second quarter of 2024. Third quarter, promote a new corporal to replace Corporal Wilson and hold the Citizens Academy, which will run August through November. Fourth quarter, Citizens Academy graduation will occur, and we will, by the end of the fourth quarter, have recertified all patrol tactics training for officers who are due. So again, this is a 3-year cycle. We just achieved full 100% at the end of 2023. I should note here also that even if we, all the people that we hire, lateral or entry level, get our local patrol tactics course. Technically, upon graduation, currently from BLEA, they say that they're certified. We believe very much in the training that we're providing here as going far above and beyond what they're getting in patrol tactics at the academy. And so we have consistently over the last 3 years, as we've gotten everybody certified, we have agreed that it is best for us and beneficial to that individual officer to push them through that course as well. So again, that will be, I think we have 4 officer level courses that are scheduled for 2024, as well our local Chelan Wenatchee hub, which we partner with all of our regional law enforcement partners in the area to pull off as far as instructors. We'll be doing we'll be hosting here locally an 80-hour instructor course for instructors from other agencies, other regions around the state. And we'll also be hosting our first formal recertification course for all of our instructors to make sure that they get recertified, but then that too will be open for other agencies to send their instructors that are up for recertification to that course as well. So in total, we'll be actually hosting 6 different courses throughout the year, one of which is that 80-hour trainer's course, which is the initial training to become a certified trainer in this field. 2024 goals for the Special Services Division. So the Special Services Division is comprised of our traffic, our school resource officers, and our parking. In the first quarter for traffic, develop a repeatable model for Washington State Traffic Safety Commission grant reporting. So they're tracking, and I should call out Sergeant Vasquez has done a fantastic job of building a way to track all of the stats and the data that his unit is collecting and the activity of that. We're required to report quarterly back to the state on achieving and addressing the things that are agreed upon within the contract to be the areas of focus. And so that reporting will occur quarterly, but then also a final annual report will have to be submitted as well. Also for the traffic division, develop a regular social media plan, both in English and Spanish. So that'll include utilizing our Instagram and Facebook pages to push information out to the public for education. Additionally, they've developed, and I just saw the final draft of it today, and they've started printing is a pamphlet, a trifold pamphlet that has been printed in both English and Spanish that we're going to distribute. We'll make it available across the city at DOL licensing offices. We're going to bring some up here to City Hall. We'll have some in our lobby and any other creative places that we can think to get that pamphlet out there to show the areas of focus that they'll be addressing. For the SROs, they're going to plan for a youth academy during 2024 summer break. So this is kind of a spin-off of the Citizens Academy, but directed toward our youth, directed towards middle school, high school age youth in our area to get more connected with them and build those relationships that are very much needed in our community. Additionally, for SROs, develop daily activity tracking method. Currently, there isn't a good tracking method in place to accurately track what our SROs are doing. So they're gonna try to develop, or they will be developing a method of tracking that we'll be able to utilize for statistics moving forward. Second quarter for traffic, increase racing specific patrols. So there's several things that within that grant and that contract that are kind of the high level, state level areas of focus. DUI, seatbelts, reckless driving, and racing, I believe, are kind of those top 4, or speed as well. They're going to focus on racing. They're going to do some very targeted education using social media for racing, because some of the laws around racing have changed, where we can actually now impound vehicles that have been used for racing. So there's an increased deterrent there for us to be able to utilize to deter local racers. Parking, push social media education posts. Tito's been doing a great job out there. I think that, you know, we've been getting a lot of great feedback. Having him back has been just an absolute game changer for us at the police department, and relieved patrol from needing to handle those things without having a dedicated person for several years. So we're in a really great place as a city and as a department. Having Tito out there, he's doing a great job. Third quarter SRO is actually to hold the youth academy during the summer. And then parking, the PUD boat launch and parking enforcement. So the PUD has asked us to help them with enforcement down behind Pybus at the boat launch parking area, where it is restricted to trucks with trailers or vehicles with trailers for specific use at the boat launch. And so we're gonna work with them to get that done, to keep that area open for its intended purpose. Fourth quarter traffic, complete the first year data for grant reporting and SRO's Operation Turkey Drop, which we did our first Operation Turkey Drop in 2023, and Officer Fuller, Corey Fuller, headed that up after getting the idea and seeing it in another jurisdiction, brought it here to Wenatchee. And then we'll also have our Shop with Cops event as well, which we've done every year for many, many years, and is a great opportunity and a great success. Upcoming events, Polar Plunge is going to be March 1st. Rails and Ales is coming up in March as well on the 9th, and that will be staffed with 2 off-duty officers with the expanded location. And help me out here, Captain Reinfeld, I think it's gonna run on Yakima Street.
Rondo from Mission to the railroad tracks
Okay,
for the venue, and then Wenatchee Avenue will be closed from Yakima to just beyond Rondo to facilitate traffic not entering some food trucks, beer gardens, and other entertainment venues, along with Centennial Park being used for a family snow day during the day and a concert in the evening.
so definitely a very much expanded event from years past. It's continued to grow every year and continues to grow. Regional Law Enforcement Awards Night, it shows here in April. We're looking at a May date, actually, for the May 8th is our tentative date for that. Once that's finalized, we'll of course share that information for anybody here that would like to attend. And then Apple Blossom. Chief for a Day will be on April 25th at Memorial Park. Captain Reinfeld and Chief Crown went and met our little chief for the first time today. She's 5 years old and has dwarfism. So I understand she is cute as a button. So staffing for other events will be pending further meetings with Apple Blossom Festival. All main events will be staffed with on-duty personnel, including both parades and a transition to Tour de Bloom immediately after the Grand Parade. Parade staging will be substantially different due to the construction at Triangle Park. So Triangle Park is going to be closed down for a significant period of time to build the softball or baseball complex that they're doing there. So the staging area is actually going to be moved to the street, and I'll make sure I'm getting this right again with Captain Reinfeld's help, but it's actually going to wrap all the way around from Cherry or Rondo there at Miller. It's going to go south all the way down and around onto Millardale area, down around Pioneer Middle School. So the parade will actually be strung in the road all the way down and around the Pioneer Middle School to alleviate or make up for the lost space and not being able to stage in the large grass area there at Triangle Park.
Still kind of a work in progress, I believe.
That wouldn't surprise me. I think that's gonna be a major change, and it sounds like that's gonna be in place for a couple of years while that construction goes on. So,
And detours around that is going to change significantly.
yep, absolutely. So, and I'll pass it back off to Chief Crown.
Well, we almost did it. We were trying to shoot for 1 hour. You only have a couple more slides to go through. So that's the number, the forecast number. I think that the 43 of 48 officers is optimistic because of some of the things that you'll see right below that. But in our field training program, there's going to be a lot more this year as we develop some good candidates. We're never going to put somebody in this uniform that we don't think that we can keep. Sometimes it's disappointing and you can't, they're not performing at the standard that we want, and unfortunately we have to separate that person. It doesn't happen always, and it's extremely painful because you start back over again in some of the same stresses that you have within your department for training. They just become Groundhog Day, and you have to start all over. Officer Romero starts February 20th. Projected separations, this is what scares me a bit. So you got March and June with 2 officers separating from us. You already heard about Corporal Wilson. You've heard about Sergeant Weatherman in October. That creates that deficit where we're back down to 40 if we don't put some more people on board. We have just done an oral board for new hire officers last week. Actually, it was this week. And we're going to be fully vetting those folks. We have a list to work through, but we're already starting to gear up for our next oral panel. And if you know anybody that would be a good fit for a police officer, please encourage them now. We're going to have some serious deficits over the next couple of years, I believe. 25 and beyond, we're going to capitalize on our fleet. One of the biggest things that we've came across, and it's the looking at our ER&R accounts. When I started here back in 2016, one of our vehicles, fully outfitted, ready to roll down the street, cost us, with everything put into them, around $70,000. Flash forward to today, that same car that has the identical equipment in it, $105,000 to $110,000 when you start thinking about a rifle that goes in it and the computers that are there. So we need to look at that ER&R rate. We need to look at possibly purchasing some used vehicles just to keep our fleet healthy. And it has benefited the city by having some of our school resource officers, our SWAT team members, by having take-home cars so they can actually respond from their house to the site in which they're going to start training or start planning for the SWAT call out or whatever they're doing. It's been very useful for us to have that luxury in place, and we're extending the life of our vehicles in order to kind of meet that. It's risky. You could have a vehicle just die on you, and then you've got nothing on trade-in value or sale surplus value. So it's risky. In 2026, as we're going through 2025, we've got that balloon payment that's coming up, right? So that's the end of the grant at the very end of 2025, and we take on the bill for running that. I think you're going to see over the next few years high value, high quality production out of our traffic unit. You're going to want it to stick around because they're able to focus that type of attention on every single one of you. If you haven't gotten the email or the phone call yet about a traffic related issue, you will, and they're coming. But these guys are offsetting that tremendously. Just the mere fact that they're able to direct that activity and also address some of those big areas like distracted driving and the street racing. The noise, it's a big deal, right? Because I think at least 3 or 4 of you have gotten that email about the loud exhaust. Well, that's a new thing that we're going to be able to expend some resources towards. And that's our dogs. Mine's the really cute one, though. Her name's Ginger. Arthur, and I don't know what Ursula. Okay, 2 of them are his, but we thought we'd show you our dogs. Missed it by 9 minutes, but we're open to any sort of questions that you have. That is exhaustive, and I'd really like you all to kind of say, I'd like more of this, Laura, as well. I'd like more of this and maybe less of that. Refining this process is really important to us because we want to be able to give you a full idea of the type of work that's going on in your police department. There's a lot of statistics that we don't have an answer for right now, but as we build out our strategic plan and a couple other planning processes, we might be able to work in statistics that you're very interested in. Sometimes they're just too hard to pull out of the hat, but for right now, we're open to any sort of suggestions. And please, questions.
Yeah, Chief Crown, I think what we'll do is just go, if everybody, you don't have to ask a question, but we'll just go in order, ask a question. And Officer Klein, I am going to ask you to come up just for a minute and tell us a little bit, because you're right in the boots of the ground, and I know you're on the radio today, and I'd like you just to spend a minute with us and tell us what kind of feedback, what you're hearing on the ground there.
Sure. So thanks for letting me come and sit through this. It was informational for me too. I'm Officer Klein. I'm one of 2 traffic officers assigned this year. Sergeant Vasquez is assigned to the traffic division, but he's also shares responsibilities with the SROs. It's my understanding that Sergeant Vasquez is at the jail booking a DUI right now that was involved in a collision, and Officer Ruiz found a stolen car, and so he's not here to speak as well. So you get me. I apologize about that. But when we signed up for this, I guess to be honest, we didn't really know what it was going to be. We were tasked with building it from the ground up. So we took all the input that we got from the city, the complaints that were made, the known problems that we knew of, and found ways to work through those. The biggest, I guess one of the biggest hurdles that we have right now is how do we stop people from racing in the city? And with the legislative changes for racing, it really gives us a lot of teeth to start enforcing that. It hasn't been there hasn't been the capability for us to really punish the people that are choosing to race, other than an infraction. Like the chief had mentioned, the jail's very picky on misdemeanor offenses, which racing is. And so it was a ticket and a court date, and they're driving the vehicle that they just used to race through town unaway from our contact. The law now allows us to tow those vehicles and repeat offenders to seize the vehicle for forfeiture. I think it's going to be a tremendous deterrent to stop people from racing. And in addition to that, the modified exhaust, the speed, the crashes, that's what we're here to help with. In the past, it's been a function of patrol, and it's been an expectation that they handle that while they're managing the 23,000 calls for service. And it just got to a point where it was too much. It's simply too much work to be doing. And so something's got to give somewhere, and that was unfortunately traffic. And so that's what our unit is designed to do, is to focus on that issue and to find ways to solve it, and through enforcement and education.
Yeah, I think the key there was the education, because I know there's been quite a few hours, and actually I'm hearing good response back that we finally are being a little bit more proactive and doing something for our community. So thank you for being here, and thanks for what you're doing. And I know it's kind of a moving target, but it's impressive. I hear great things about what's already going on. It's only been going a month, so.
Yeah, it's a weird feeling when you write somebody a ticket and they say thank you. But ironically enough, I think the community is accepted what we're here to do, and the feedback that we get online and in person is positive. So it's not all negatives. Some people genuinely do learn from the infractions, and it's good. So I'm thankful that we had the position open up. I'll speak on behalf of Officer Ruiz and Sergeant Vasquez that it's something that the city needed, and it's important, and I genuinely feel that the feedback that I've gotten from the community is positive. So thank you guys for approving it.
Thank you, Officer Klein. So we'll just go around if you have some questions.
Yeah, so Chief, my question actually regards education of the public, and I'm wondering, what our plan for that is, and I'm thinking that the more we can promote our traffic division, maybe see if we can get newspaper, radio perfect today. I'm going to see if I can look up that interview. The more things we can do to educate the public and let them know, hey, we're out here doing this now, and just kind of your thoughts on the best way to get the public educated.
Yeah, so these guys have already started their barrage, and they're doing exactly that. Today, Officer Klein was on KPQ. We were all headed as command staff over to the Regional Law Enforcement Administration meeting. So I got to get a slice of that. They're doing a great job of developing social media posts. Some of these statistics that you see on your screen there, that is a good stat for people to look at, is that 50% of the folks that are actually getting stopped are getting citations. And I think these guys would agree that the folks that are getting the citations deserve citations. It goes beyond the education portion on it. You've got to kind of box in behavior with enforcement side of it.
Absolutely.
And the education piece is just getting the word out that, yep, if you see red and blue flashing lights around town, there is more of an emphasis on traffic enforcement in Wenatchee. And it's targeted. We're trying to make sure that those behaviors that cause collisions, fatalities, and destruction of property are brought down. And that's what we're gonna report out every single year of our, this unit's being in place. I think it's a good reminder to folks every single year that, hey, these are the statistics. You're not seeing an over crazed revenue builder. No, this is literally the traffic stops that go into place every single day. I've told every single officer in our department, I don't care how many citations you issue, you need to make traffic stops. From traffic stops come investigations. You find drugs, you find people that are wanted, you find folks that are don't have insurance and are betting on that they're not going to get stopped or get a ticket for not having insurance. Why not? The rest of the world, you could save $1,300 a year if you just didn't have insurance, and that's if you got a good driving record. So it's some of that education that I think is going to be really important with hitting up some of our Spanish-speaking radio stations. Getting Officer Ruiz is bilingual. He's going to help a tremendous amount on building every pamphlet that we create, every message that we want to put in there. He's going to be that voice. So I think we're going to be serving our valley very well with that barrage of education.
Thank you very much. And I'm sure the neighbors that we hear from the most are going to be excited to hear about this.
Well, funny story that I heard from Tammy's crew, that there's literally people that going down and paying their citations and saying, I hate getting this ticket, but I'm sure glad you got a traffic unit.
Yeah.
So it's good feedback.
Thank you for a really good presentation, each of you. And I tried to get all these acronyms, but I missed EVOC, driving like a maniac, I don't think was what it stood for, but, so I'm just curious. EVOC.
EVOC, it stands for Emergency Vehicle Operation Course.
There you
And that's the one that we have up in Ephrata, where
Right.
we have to travel an hour each direction and then get 3 hours of training. So it's difficult, but as you know, we live in a valley. We live in kind of a fishbowl with not a lot of open spaces, and that is the biggest hamper to doing that type of training. But I will tell you this, it isn't necessarily driving crazy on the track that is super important. It's the skills course, because police officers get in a hurry and they back into stuff. Everything from other cars to dumpsters to missing the object in the alleyway when they're trying to find the guy that ran from them. Those type of skills course help, and they absolutely need to be in place because you lower your risk with those folks that are driving a lot. You know, think about it in a 12-hour period, you may be in a small area, but there's a lot of trails that they go through in the night. So both are really important.
Thank you, Chief Crown. Appreciate the presentation, appreciate the focus on what our community wants and is looking for and talking about for a while, so I appreciate all that.
You bet.
Yeah, just thanks for the presentation, learned a lot. I'm really looking forward to seeing even more information as you figure out like what's gonna happen. I'd love to see, like, I just love the data, because then it's like, it's there, you know, you're not just making assumptions. I personally like to see maybe a little more specific to where these calls for services, like maybe like geographically in our community, like, but But yeah, that's something that I look forward to in the future, but thank you very much.
We've toyed around with that idea, and we actually have a solution for that. We hot map things, where we're using data from our, calls for service, and we can put clusters on our map. We actually used it at one time for the rash of vehicle prowls that we were getting and thefts. And we were able to actually create a dot that led to the footbridge, where we're seeing this interaction between East Wenatchee and Wenatchee, and going up to the high school and the high school parking lot and a couple of neighborhoods up in that area. So it's very useful from a crime analytics standpoint. I didn't put it on one of these slides, but it's something that we've always thought would be a good use of resources, is get some crime analytics and do some predictive policing, knowing where your hot spots are and when the things are occurring, and then being able to direct activity into those hot spots. So we'd really like to see that happen in the future.
Thank you.
It happens a lot on District 3.
I'm
just
kidding. Yeah.
Councilmember Cuevas, do you have any other questions, or? That's a lot of-
No questions, just a thank you for all the great information. It was very informative. I really appreciate the community education and support component. We had an event here the other morning, and there were some great public comments about how you guys are supporting different business owners and people in the community, so thank you for that. And I'm also really stoked to see the Youth Academy, because I agree that's really crucial that we start to have an influence in our youth at a young age and get that relationship built, so thank you. I think it's great.
It's kind of, we also see it as kind of like a farm league, because we plant the seed early
Yeah.
about law enforcement. It's not a career that anymore, everybody picks. I mean, when we were kids, it was, I'm gonna be a fireman, or I'm gonna be a police officer, I'm gonna be a doctor. Seems like, those seed plantings don't happen quite as often anymore. But it is an awesome way. I just can't tell you how much one person going through our Citizens Academy shares the experience with 6 other people. They share it, and it becomes a really big deal. And we're on a good streak right now with the number that we've been able to provide and the folks that have been in there. Sage, one of our women resource places here in town, they had like 5 or 6 employees that attended this. And it was because of the new director saying, we got to build a relationship with the police department. This is a great way of doing it. And she was right.
That's great.
Yeah.
Chief, I just want to say thank you and to your department. This is great information. This is really useful now. I do have questions, but I want to do it privately so I can
Okay.
educate myself first.
Sure.
And then down the road, I want to do some ride-alongs. I want to see the real action on the roads. The
not
real
like
traffic
that.
stops.
Yeah, yeah. Again, please jot down some notes for yourself. If you guys saw something in the presentation, you have a copy on it. If you're thinking in your head, more of this, less of that, we want to refine it. We want these to be useful every year, and it is a great way to show what the police department's really up to.
We know, hopefully you guys know that, obviously the city council here, we support you. And we also know to stay out of your way, because you guys are the experts, and we need to keep that in mind. So I appreciate, and hopefully you go back and tell every officer, the city council here supports our police department, and we know you guys are doing the right thing.
It's felt. You guys have always done a phenomenal job of providing that sort of support. And a lot of times I talk to these guys about how we come over here and we don't come up with harebrained ideas to spend money. We come up with things that are going to benefit our community, and we refine the heck out of it, because we know that people are fiscally conservative in this valley. We want to make sure that they're getting the most bang for their buck out of their police department. So the support that this council has given the police department has been second to none, and we appreciate it.
Well,
Appreciate you.
thanks for everybody being here. Thanks for everybody to come, and it was a great experience for us.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
all.
Thank you.